All right, so hi, I'm Jeroen Willemsen. I'm from security consultant at Xibia, and I hope with this I got your attention. I want to talk to you about security pipelines and how you can build this yourself. So the whole story starts when you start developing. So you start with creating stories in Jira, you start creating code, put that in Git, Git host, whatever, and from there on you're going to start building stuff. So by that, you're going to get into some sort of pace. So the next thing that happens is that basically something like Jenkins could start building this, could start store artifacts for you, your Docker containers, your jar files in an artifactory, stuff like that. And then the next thing, you could deploy the development. So that all sounds fun in games, and that's the thing we want to do. That's what DevOps is all about, is enrich quality. So you start testing, you start integration testing, you start monitoring, and you start deploying it. And now you're ready for validation. So basically, you got something to play with right now. And now you think you can go to production. Yeah, hell no. Because now we security guys came around. We came under our little cupboard because we were hiding for a DevOps thing, and we're saying, no, you can't go live because there are security leaks, there's issues in there, you have to fix those. And, well, you're going to get into trouble from there onward. So what you have to do is build your own pipeline. And the first step, the easiest step, is start analyzing, for instance, your third-party dependencies. Do you have any licenses, for instance, that are compatible with what you're supposed to do? Or do you have any third-party components that actually have vulnerabilities? A good example, for instance, is the Retire Easy app, which is also known as NodeCode from OWASP. Which has a few third-party components with vulnerabilities, such as the Bootstrap framework that had something not entirely cleaned out, so you could do XSS attacks with that. And the next thing is you could start doing some runtime analysis, again with a famous OWASP tool called Zap. Probably you'll know about that. And what you have to do basically to make sure that Zap understands what you're doing, you have to feed it your end-to-end tests, which you, by the way, probably already have written, right? So that's cool. And after that, you can let Zap do quick scans. So you get an idea of the vulnerabilities that are out there. Obviously, this isn't everything, but at least you get the basics right. So from there onward, you have something ready for validation, but at least you know something about the security. And what will Zap report you is something that looks like this. So you get a report with some high, medium, whatever findings or criticals. You can start analyzing those, and you can start work with them. So that kind of gives you a runtime analysis result. And the tools I'm just mentioning are all open source, including Zap. So there's no payment, you can just start. And, well, I heard Docker, so everybody knows Docker. One thing you can use for free is Claire. Claire is a static analysis tool for your Docker containers to see if you messed up in terms of, again, third-party code that's in there. So how does that work? Well, basically, all of you probably know Docker, but you have a bunch of layers in there. And those layers might use outdated libraries or just libraries with vulnerabilities, which basically means that your container is running those things with vulnerabilities. In the end, after that pipeline, you can get those results basically and archive those. So for every build, you now have an idea of what were my licenses, where were my third-party vulnerabilities, what did Zap find, and you get a basic idea. Now, all of that needs to be filtered out because there is a lot of mumbo-jumbo in there where you as a developer or ops guy don't care about. So the easiest way to fix that is to use something like Defect Dojo. And if then we security guys together, if you look at Defect Dojo and find something, we'll create tickets together in Jira so you can actually start fixing stuff. And now we just built a security pipeline in 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Isn't that awesome? That's the way it works. It's that simple. Now you have a full pipeline which continuously allows you to improve yourself. Obviously, you're not done yet because Defect Dojo could show this for one application. So here you see some pretty results for what can you see in terms of vulnerabilities. It really shows information value so you know what you have to expect. But you're still not there yet because you have to scale this up for multiple applications. So luckily, you can feed Defect Dojo for every team, for every application actually, what's in there. So now you can get pretty overviews, and we security people will love you for providing us that intel so we can help you fixing things before we hire a weird pen tester. Does that mean you're done? No, there's tons of more cool stuff you can put in there. Luckily, tomorrow some people will talk about Inspec. Other tools will be talked about, so that's going to be very nice. But at least you have some basics right now. And most important, of course, is if you see all this, you figured, well, this guy is talking about this in 5 minutes, but this is going to take me months to implement. Don't worry, take your time, but just start doing it. it doesn't matter how long it takes, just start implementing security checks, because you'll need that. Yesterday we had a workshop about that, basically, and that's my closing, for at least how to integrate ZAP, because that's the hardest part of everything that you saw. The workshop slides are still available, and I would say just start. And I want to thank you all for your time.
No, but you do get one of these, of course.
Are you ready?
I guess so. Wow, this seems loud. Hey everyone, I'm Jason. I'm a technical evangelist at Datadog. 3 years ago, as Chris brought up this morning, I started learning Dutch and about the Dutch language. And I know there's a ton of non-Dutch people here in the audience. So I figured I'd teach you what I've learned over the past 3 years. En aan alle Nederlanders, dank u voor uw prachtige, fantastische cultuur. En ik verontschuldig me voor mijn slechte uitspraak van Nederlands. So, for all of the Dutch people, for the non-Dutch people, the first word you should learn is leuk. Leuk roughly means cool, the slang term, not the temperature. So you can, for example, say, if someone's going to devopsdays, you can say leuk, because it's really cool. The second word that you should learn is lekker. Lekker translates into tasty or delicious. So for example, if you're out, you had lunch or you eat a stroopwafel, you can say lekker, because it's delicious. And speaking of food, because I often speak of food, a few of the foods that you should try, and I don't know what's going on with those slides, because they're totally botched right there. But there would have been a stroopwafel off to the left, because stroopwafels are delicious. And on the right, there would have been some Hollandse new or new herring. And now it's totally blank.
Chris, your stuff is broken.
But I'm just going to keep going, because Chris is running Linux, and it's the year of the Linux desktop.
Burn.
Wow.
This is not the year of the Linux desktop. I can see that from here.
Oh, there it goes.
But he is in the CLI like a hero, so that's good.
Nice. Hey, there it is. Sweet. Yeah, so as I was saying, Hollandse new. It's lekker pickled fish, pickled herring. The season just started, so if you're not Dutch, you should definitely try that. Delicious stuff. On my next slide here, jenever. Jenever's the forefather to gin. It's where gin came from, and it's delicious. And if you get served a glass that's overflowing, don't worry. Just lean forward, sip it until it's safe to pick up, and then drop. Drop is Dutch licorice. It's the reason that your mother told you not to accept candy from strangers. Stamppot, though. Stamppot is my favorite Dutch food, and it's my favorite Dutch food because there's no recipe. Stamppot is you take potatoes and you take whatever's in your fridge and you mash them together. And if you're fancy, you put a rookworst on top. But back to lekker. You know, lekker is a really confusing word because you can use lekker for all sorts of different things. You can say that the good weather is lekker, or you can tell someone to sleep well by telling them to slaap lekker. So that gets really confusing. But more confusing than all the ways you can use lekker is gezellig. And it's gezellig is confusing partly because it's got that Dutch sound, which I can't even do. It's back in your throat, and I would just spit on this microphone. But gezellig is also confusing because it has no English translation. Some people say that gezellig is fun or cozy or convivial, but as any Dutch person knows, that doesn't encompass it. You have to actually feel gezellig to understand gezellig. So for those non-Dutch people, the way that you can feel this is tonight at the devopsdays Amsterdam barbecue. That will be your introduction to gezellig. But the cool thing about gezellig is that it's more than just events and things you experience. Gezellig can be things and people, and even food can be gezellig. For example, stamppot on a cold, rainy day when you're just wet and you want that warm, edible hug, or what we call comfort food. So stamppot can be gezellig. And now you might be thinking, this guy has a weird obsession with STEMPOT. He's brought it up a few times. But the reason I think is because that DevOps is very much like STEMPOT, because DevOps starts with potatoes. Just kidding. DevOps, we all know DevOps starts with culture. And you can't do DevOps with a broken culture. You can't make STEMPOT without potatoes. But you also don't just start with a laundry list or a grocery list of things to buy, right? You don't go out and buy all these ingredients for STEMPOT. And you can't do that with DevOps. You don't make a list of all the DevOps tools and go buy the DevOps. You really have to, just like STEMPOT, you have to look in your fridge and see what you have available. So at DevOps, you take the people and the culture and the processes and tools that you already have, and you mash them all together just like STEMPOT. And sometimes what you come up with isn't so great. You get these weird combinations. Well, yeah. But you make note of these weird combinations, and maybe then you start to analyze what ingredients you have, what you've put in your combinations. And the great thing about DevOps is that it's iterative. So you take those ingredients and you take that pineapple out, right? And you throw in some kale or some endive. And you continue to take the pieces that don't work for you, you take them out and you replace them slowly one by one, because DevOps really is an iterative process. And once you find something that does work for you, maybe Hawaiian STEMPOT works for you, you share that information. Your DevOps journey is going to be unique to your company, but others can learn from it. Even though it is unique, they can take the bits that work for them. So just to recap for all the non-Dutch people, if you hear that somebody's embracing DevOps, you can say, Luke. And whenever you eat some delicious Dutch food, because it is delicious, you can exclaim, lekker. And that feeling that when you get your DevOps processes all right, you get the right processes and the right tools all working in unison, well, that feeling, that's gezellig.
You're running away too quickly.
It takes a lot of guts to use Belgian cheese in a recipe in front of a bunch of Dutch guys.
Thank you. Not quite. There it is. I've got this one.
You got one. Good luck.
So, hello, I'm Aaron from VictorOps, and I'm going to be talking about putting developers on call. Is this possible? Yes. And how might you implement some new thinking around a developer being on call? So every day from Boulder, Colorado, I'm talking to people about their incident management on call, and typically these conversations all now involve the idea of having a developer on call into an on-call rotation. And so you probably hear things about own your code and other terms in DevOps about you build it, you own it. And so there's all this rhetoric happening, and it's really hard to ferret out exactly like how might I do this in my organization. And I'm saying this is about as confusing as interpreting a Donald Trump tweet. So there's a lot of information, and it's really hard to figure out what in the heck does that all mean. So as you think about this, like what are some things that you could do to help implement DevOps in your organization and have devs on call? And so as you start to look at this and you consider what's right, I think what's right is to think about who are the best people to have on an alert. If something's going wrong and the stuff is hitting the fan, get a really good mind on it to help you solve it. A lot of times, that's going to be a developer that can help you. And one thing that's a problem about this is you're not alone in these considerations. And it's really challenging, so you're not alone. I've talked to people today that just get alerts via email. Other people are doing automation. So there's a really large spectrum that you can draw from to do this. And one thing when people are doing this, it's a little scary, right? If you're a developer and you're thinking about being on call, it's pretty shitty to think about 3 a.m. I'm getting called and I don't know what's going on. Like that's really scary for a developer. So there's things that you have to do to help them kind of ease into this and understand. And one of the reasons why it's scary is because of these guys like Etsy and Google. They're so good at this. And how do I be good at this? I'm not going to go in the park and play football with Robin. I'm not going to go shoot some hoops with LeBron. They're really good. They have a lot of resources. They've trained themselves, and they're outstanding in their fields. So let's talk a little bit and just consider shifting the idea about a culture of availability. So how do I have people available that can help? How do I get those really good people into the organization available and starting to think about, okay, that's this culture of availability that I can reach you. And even those large organizations, or Robin, when he was learning football, came up with this idea that you start somewhere and you practice and you get into it. And it starts with one step as to like, okay, what can we do in our organization that might make us better at improving that incident resolution? And so as you think about incident maturity, maybe you can consider where you might fall on this scale. Like, do you think maybe you're more of a novice? Are you an expert? Like, what does anybody, might you know your TTA? How long does it take you to acknowledge? How long does it take you to respond? And as you're better at that, you become more of an expert. And so just a quick slide for you to consider, as you're faster at acknowledging, as you're faster at resolving, you're going to move across this continuum and move from being more of a novice into being more of an expert. And so we found that more novice and beginner organizations are going to have a little slower time to resolution. The DevOps are going to be more siloed. Your people might not be like working together as well as they could yet. And alerting might be a little bit unstructured. So maybe you're just getting emails as an alert, but you can start somewhere. You can build to being more competent. When you're more competent, you're going to have rapid TTR. DevOps communication is going to start to happen. And maybe now you start to do like post-incident analysis. So you're really looking at things happening and how can we improve. And then as you move into being more of an expert, you're going to start to see things like your time to acknowledge is going to be very more rapid. Your time to resolution is going to be rapid. And then also automated processes could come into play to help you. Continuous improvement, continuous development is being deployed now. And then you're going to have a lot of collaboration. So if you're a dev, people just want to reach you just in case. If the stuff is going wrong and you're really good at helping, people want to reach you. But additionally, if you're a dev, you're not expected to know everything. So there's a balance there to be available and helpful. And then also, if you're a dev and you're on call, people are reporting that, hey, I know a lot more about my systems now. Like, I'm better with my product. When you have ownership, when you own your product, it also gives you the ability to be better. Now you know that you can't just throw it over the fence to the ops, because if you do that, it's not going to work. So what are a couple things that you might do to help you as you consider this? So one thing, learn your alert triggers. So like, what's triggering alerts in your environment? Participate in a post-incident analysis. So join a group that's talking about what happened, and then find a buddy that you can join up with so you're not like sitting alone and doing this. So I encourage everybody, be victorious with this. Give it a shot. You're going to be able to help other people in your organization. You're going to ensure that your application is running in the production environment. And then also, your end user, the people that really use your stuff, are probably going to have a better experience. And so the last thing I'd like to say is I'd just like to encourage everybody to have a little bit more love and a little bit less hate. Thanks for letting me be here today. I really appreciate it.